What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, guys, so we are basically going to continue our coverage over the dawn of DC, where we basically pick up with the adventures of Superman, Jonathan Kent, or Jon Kent. Now, if you're wondering, wait a second, why is this guy named Jonathan Kent is Superman? Well, let me explain. Let me explain to the new fans out there for DC Comics. Basically, there was a point in DC Comics where you had Clark Kent leave the Earth. Now, when Clark Kent left the Earth, of course, he basically promoted his son to become the new Superman, Jonathan Kent. Now, even though Clark Kent came back to the Earth, you still had DC Comics basically say they're both going to be Superman. So you have Superman Clark Kent and you have Superman Jonathan Kent. Now, with that being said, though, they each have their own book. Really, Clark has two books, but with Jonathan, this is his book. Now, it is a mini series that looks like it's going to lead into something else down the road, but for right now, it's just a mini series. Now, with that being said, this mini series basically focuses on Jonathan Kent being Superman, even though his father has returned, but it's also Jonathan Kent going into the multiverse, where basically he will meet other versions of his father across the multiverse, or really other versions of Supermen across the universe. Not just his father or him, but other characters who have basically taken up the role as Superman. Now, with that being said, he will also meet the Injustice Superman as well. But the Injustice Superman is not the main bad guy in the first couple of chapters that we are going to cover in today's video. By the way, we are only going to cover issues number 1 and number 2 because for right now, those are the only books out at the moment. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the beginning of the dawn of DC for Jonathan Kent as the Adventures of Superman. Now, in the opening pages of this book, are the first issue of the Adventures of Superman, we basically pick up with Clark Kent Superman. Now, here's the thing though. Clark Kent Superman looks defeated. It looks like he was badly beaten. But the question is though, who did this to him? Now, right off the bat, we are basically introduced to Ultraman. Now, Ultraman is a character that has been around for a good period of time in DC Comics. And matter of fact, we have talked about this character on my channel. But basically, Ultraman is an evil Superman from Earth 3, where basically most of the heroes that you guys know and love are basically evil. Now, with that being said, this is Ultraman attacking Clark Kent to the point where Clark Kent is about to die. But you have Ultraman tell Clark Kent, go ahead, say your final words. And of course, his final words was Lois. And for Ultraman, he's kind of like, yep, just like all the other Supermen across the multiverse, they all love their Lois Lane. But of course, this is where you're going to die. And you have Ultraman basically kill off Superman. Clark Kent is dead. Right off the bat, you're kind of wondering, wait a second. This is huge. Ultraman just killed off Clark Kent. But then we jump over to Earth Zero, the main DC universe, where we basically pick up with Jonathan Kent, which tells us that basically what we saw earlier took place on an alternate Earth. Now, with that being said, with us picking up with Jonathan Kent, right now we see him outside with his boyfriend Jay. Now, here's the thing about Jay. Jay has to constantly be undercover because the world knows that Jay is basically dating Superman, the Jonathan Kent Superman. But here's the problem though with that right there. If Jay is not undercover and he is seen with Jonathan Kent, like say on a date, people are going to put two to two together that basically Jonathan Kent is Superman. And so even though Jay's undercover, Jonathan Kent can basically be himself, unlike Jay. But while you have the two characters right now kind of hanging out, boyfriend and boyfriend stuff, that's the moment you do have Jonathan Kent sees something falling out of the sky. And so, of course, he has to leave and go be Superman. And of course, as he's leaving, he is called up by Oracle. Now, remember, Oracle is basically Barbara Gordon, the original Batgirl post-crisis. But either way, though, right now, she's calling up Jonathan like, hey, man, we need your help. We need Superman's help. Basically, right now, what's falling out of the sky is a bunch of satellites. So you have things that are just falling out of the sky, and they're all basically pieces of different satellites that have just broken apart. And so, of course, Superman must basically get rid of those pieces before they crash on the earth and cause a lot of damage to people's homes and businesses. Now, of course, while you have Superman doing that, you do have Oracle say that literally all of these satellites belong to Lord Enterprise. Now, of course, we're going to learn more about Lord Enterprise probably later on in other videos and other books. But for right now, Lord Enterprise is the reason why a lot of these satellites are just falling out of the sky. Somebody had just weaponized these satellites to do a lot of damage to the planet Earth. And the question is, though, who did that? Here comes something new about Jonathan Kent, because while he is trying to get rid of all those pieces of satellites, well, that is the moment he begins to feel some kind of tingle, some kind of new power is beginning to unlock, and it looks like electricity. But of course, he has no idea how to tap into it. But of course, with that power kind of showing itself to him, he's kind of wondering what's going on with him. What is this new power, and why is it only coming out now after years and years later of being Superboy and Superman? Now, of course, you do have Jonathan Kent kind of remember that basically he has a job to do. And so, of course, he does try to get back to work, because right now you have a lot of different pieces of satellites that are just falling out of the sky and they're crashing into the earth. And so, of course, he has to get to work. Now, of course, that is the moment you do have Oracle tell him, hey, listen, most of the pieces that were falling out of the sky, they just disappeared just like that. Like literally, they're gone. And of course, for Jonathan, he's kind of like, what do you mean they're gone? And so you would think that maybe the Justice League had appeared, or maybe like his father, Clark Kent, had appeared. But the thing is, though, no. It's actually Val-Zod. Now, Val-Zod is a Superman, but he is a Superman from Earth 2. Now on Earth 2, you had some more children survive the explosion of Krypton. I want to say it was Kal-El, Val-Zod, Kara, and I forgot the fourth child name was. But basically, on Earth 2, you had 4 kids survive the destruction of Krypton. Now, of course, this is Val-Zod coming here to Earth 0 to basically talk to Jonathan Kent, because Val-Zod needs his help with a certain kind of mission. Now, right off the bat, we have to remember that basically Jonathan Kent never met Val-Zod. They have never met. And so you have Tom Taylor kind of play the game where is Jonathan Kent trying to trust Val-Zod only because Val-Zod did help save the world from all those falling pieces of satellites that could have done a lot of damage to the earth. And so, of course, it's Jonathan Kent giving Val-Zod the chance to say, hey, I'm not bad, I'm good, and I'm actually here for a good reason. And so you have Val-Zod say, listen, I know it's hard to trust me, but there is somebody who can basically vouch for me, who can tell you that I am a good person. And that person is Mr. Terrific. Now, this makes sense because back when we had Earth 2 comics in the beginning of the New 52, I want to say, if I remember correctly, Mr. Terrific was basically trapped on Earth 2. And so, of course, he was able to meet the characters on Earth 2. And so, it's Val-Zod saying, if Mr. Terrific vouches for me, that's how you know that I'm basically a good person. But you do have Jonathan Kent, Val-Zod, Lois Lane as well, and also Mr. Terrific meet up at the old farmhouse that belongs to the Kent family. Now, this does lead into the conversation where you're going to have Jonathan Kent begin his adventures across the multiverse. And what I mean by that is you do have Val Zod basically tell Jonathan, Lois, and also Mr. Terrific what's happening right now across the multiverse, which is basically Ultraman is going around and killing off different Clark Kents across the multiverse. Now, here's the thing though. Val Zod also brought Earth 2 version of Red Tornado. Now, Earth 2 version of Red Tornado is literally Lois Lane. Like, it's her basically trapped inside the Earth 2 Red Tornado body. But either way, though, this is Val Zod and Red Tornado from Earth 2 telling Jonathan, Lois, and Mr. Terrific, like, listen, this is what's happening right now. You have Ultraman going across the multiverse and he's killing off Supermen left and right. Now, the reason why he's able to do this because he does have a device that is basically weakening other Supermen across the multiverse that then allows Ultraman to basically kill them off. And so that is how he's killing them so easily. And so this is Val Zod saying, I need your help, Jonathan Kent. Now, Lois Lane knew right off the bat that Val Zod had to be on Earth for a good period of time because right now at this moment you basically have Lois Lane tell us that Clark Kent and the rest of the League are not on Earth at the moment, and she knows her husband would not allow their son to go on an adventure like this at all. But of course, with her with her husband Clark Kent not being here, of course it gave Val Zod the easy chance to ask Jonathan to help out. Now, of course, you do have Red Tornado try to reason with Earth Zero Lois Lane because Earth Zero Lois Lane has no idea that Red Tornado is her just from a different Earth that's basically trapped inside a robot's body. But of course, you do have Red Tornado tell our Lois Lane, I'm just you from an alternate Earth. I understand what you're feeling right now. The idea to let your only child go across the multiverse to save us all is a huge task to ask, but it's a task that he has to actually accomplish. Now, when it comes to Jonathan Kent and Ultraman, they have met before. And matter of fact, the reason why Jonathan Kent had aged up, or really one of the many reasons why he was aged up, because he aged up twice. Basically, Jonathan Kent was taken by Ultraman and kept in Ultraman's universe. And I want to say Ultraman kept him in a volcano that was basically away from the yellow sun, which of course did weaken Jonathan Kent. And so he was unable to basically escape. And so he was able to escape later on. But of course, years and years passed by. So of course, when he came back to the main DC universe, he was an adult or a young adult. And so for Jonathan Kent, it's a very huge thing to ask him to basically go into the multiverse to fight against Ultraman, the same guy who had kept him locked up for years and years and years. But of course, it's Jonathan Kent kind of realizing he doesn't really have a choice. Now, we do jump over to the Fortress of Solitude. Now, with the Fortress of Solitude, this is Val Zod, Red Tornado, and Jonathan Kent getting ready to go on the adventure to go find Ultraman, to basically stop him. Now, for Red Tornado to locate Ultraman in the multiverse, she can only do that when he's about to travel in the multiverse. So when he's traveling in the multiverse, she'll be able to actually locate him. Now, this is also the moment where you kind of have Lois Lane passing off some advice to Jay, the boyfriend to Jonathan Kent, because for Jay, he's still kind of new to being on the sideline while his significant other is a hero. And so it's Lois Lane trying to give him some advice like, hey, listen, it is going to be rough. It's not easy. And I try to do other hobbies to kind of take my mind off of things, but I'm going to tell you the truth. It doesn't really work that well. but of course we have to do something to help us out while they're out there trying to save all the lives across the universe, or sometimes the multiverse. But you do have Lois Lane tell Jay to make sure Jay tells Jonathan to have Jonathan promise that he'll come back, because when it comes to Superman, they don't break promises. And so if Jay makes a promise with Jonathan that Jonathan will come back, then Jonathan cannot break that promise. Now, you also have Jonathan bringing the Phantom Zone projector. Now, remember, the Phantom Zone was a way for Krypton years and years ago to lock away the worst enemies they had on Krypton. Now, Superman also does use it as well, Clark Kent, to lock away the same thing, the worst enemies of his somewhere safe away from the Earth. And of course, right now, it seems like what they're going to do is put Ultraman in the Phantom Zone projector. Now, while you have everyone talking to one another, well, that is the moment you do have Red Tornado, Lois Lane, basically tell everyone that she was able to locate Ultraman. And so, of course, it's now time for them to leave to go find Ultraman and to hopefully stop him. Now, of course, when they do arrive to the other Earth where Ultraman is at, they're now wondering if their plan is actually going to work, which is, hey, let's throw Ultraman into the Phantom Zone projector. Now, that's a good idea, but again, they don't have a complete plan here. And so without a complete plan, this plan right now they have is going to fall apart very quickly. And matter of fact, it does, because while they're trying to find Ultraman, he just appears and he goes right through the body of Red Tornado, basically splitting her in half. And just like that, she's now off the board. Now you have Val-Zod trying to save her pieces so that he'll be able to put her back together once again. And so with him being distracted, that really leaves Jonathan Kent to fight against Ultraman. Now when it comes to Ultraman and Jonathan Kent, Jonathan gets his butt whooped. I mean, homeboy gets his butt whooped badly, to the point where it's not a good fight. You're kind of like, dude, just stay down. Just stay down. There's no way you're going to win this fight at all. But while the fight does continue, it does lead up to the point where Ultraman is able to get his hands on the Phantom Zone projector. And when he does that, he basically banished both Red Tornado and Val-Zod into the Phantom Zone. And this is huge because now it just leaves Jonathan to fight against Ultraman by himself. And in the past, Ultraman has won a lot of fights against Jonathan Kent. Now, of course, this does lead into a battle between Jonathan Kent and Ultraman. Now, while the two characters are fighting against one another, you can basically say that this is Jonathan Kent wanting to get revenge against Ultraman. Because with Ultraman, Ultraman has taken so many years away from Jonathan that basically it's not fair. And so it's Jonathan wanting to get revenge against Ultraman, on top of the idea hoping that he'll be able to bring back Val-Zod and also Red Tornado from the Phantom Zone. And even on top of that, to hopefully save the multiverse from basically Ultraman. Now, while the two characters are fighting against one another, you do have Ultraman pointing out something. If Jonathan Kent wants to actually defeat Ultraman, he has to kill Ultraman, something that Jonathan doesn't want to do. But of course, if he wants to finally get rid of Ultraman, he's gonna have to kill Ultraman. But that is the moment you do have Jonathan's new powers just activate once again. And we saw his new powers earlier in this video, but now they're coming back. And this time, we kind of find out, yes, it does seem like he does have the powers of electricity. And so with the powers of electricity, and of course the rest of his Superman powers, he was able to knock out Ultraman. But here comes the problem though. After using that power and kind of using a lot of that power, it kind of tired him out to the point where he also passes out right next to Ultraman. Now, that is the moment you do have Ultraman get back up. Now, when Ultraman does get back up, he's basically talking to Jonathan in a way where it's all like, I am going to take you back to that volcano again. And when I do, you are going to stay there for many years to come. On top of that, I then going to go to your Earth, find your mother, your Lois, and make her suffer the worst out of any Loises out there in the multiverse. Now, with that being said, though, that is the moment we come to find out basically what Earth these characters are on right now. They're on the Injustice universe Earth. The Injustice Earth, where basically Clark Kent of this Earth, Superman, went crazy because his wife, his pregnant wife, Lois Lane, died. And of course, so did his unborn child. And he was the one who kind of killed Lois Lane and their unborn child on accident. But of course, when he did kill her, it made his mind snap. And so, of course, he kind of took over the Earth. Now, as soon as you have Ultraman tell Jonathan everything he wants to do, that is the moment you do have the Injustice Superman appear and snap the neck of Ultraman. So Ultraman is now dead. But right after Ultraman just basically falls over, you then have the Injustice Superman look at Jonathan and be like, oh my God, you have her eyes. Because Jonathan has Lois Lane eyes. And that is the moment you have this Injustice Superman look at Jonathan like, oh my God, you could have been the child I could have had. What the mess. But this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. Also, if you have any suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But guys, I'll see y'all next time. Later.